Here's what nobody ever stops to ask: why never attack? This pattern is not a fluke, and it is not isolated to one forgiving species. Wolves do it. Mountain lions do it. Even grizzly bears, animals strong enough to end a human life in seconds, do it. Researchers tracking predator behavior near camps and remote settlements have documented this restraint across continents, across climates, across species that share almost nothing else in common. A wolf in the Canadian backcountry and a leopard in rural India have no shared history, no shared instincts passed between them, and yet they behave the same way around a sleeping human. They stop, they wait, they leave. That kind of consistency is not an accident. It is a signal. Something is happening at the level of instinct. Something old enough and deep enough that it shows up the same way in animals that have never met each other, never shared a forest, never learned from the same lessons. The question is not whether this restraint is real. The evidence makes that clear. The question is what is actually causing it. The easy answer is the one most people already believe. Animals learned to fear us. Our fire, our tools, our numbers. Humans spent thousands of generations as the most dangerous thing in most ecosystems. And the theory goes that this danger left a mark, a kind of inherited caution passed down through every predator lineage that ever crossed paths with us. It is a clean explanation. It is also incomplete, because a sleeping human carries none of those warning signs. There is no fire burning beside them, no spear in hand, no group standing watch. Every signal that is supposed to make a human frightening has been switched off. The fire is out. The hands are empty. The body is alone and motionless on the ground. If fear of weapons and numbers were the whole story, this is exactly the moment that fear should disappear. The predator should see an unarmed, unguarded, defenseless animal lying in the open, and by that logic, it should act. It doesn't. And that gap between what fear-based thinking predicts and what actually happens in the field is where the real explanation starts. To understand it, you have to think the way a predator's brain actually works, not the way ours does. A predator does not hunt by reasoning through a checklist of dangerous things. It hunts through pattern recognition, built over a lifetime and refined over generations of exactly what prey looks like in motion. Biologists call this a search image, a kind of internal template the brain uses to instantly separate food from not food in a fraction of a second, without conscious thought. A deer fits the template. A rabbit fits the template. An upright, unfamiliar shape, lying motionless under fabric or fur, covered, still, silent, does not. This is not fear in the way we usually think about it. It is closer to confusion. The animal is not thinking, "This is dangerous." It is failing to recognize the shape in front of it as anything it knows how to hunt at all. That confusion did not appear by accident. It was built slowly over one of the longest and strangest arms races in evolutionary history. For hundreds of thousands of years, ancient humans were not the fragile creatures they appear to be at first glance. They were endurance predators, slower than almost everything around them, weaker in raw strength than almost everything around them, but capable of tracking an animal for hours, sometimes days, across open terrain until exhaustion did what claws and fangs could not. Persistence hunting, this strategy is called, and it left a reputation behind that outlived the individual hunters who built it. Across thousands of generations, in nearly every ecosystem humans touched, the same lesson repeated itself in the instincts of everything that shared that land with us. This animal is unpredictable, relentless, and dangerous in ways that have nothing to do with speed or teeth. That reputation became encoded the only way evolution encodes anything, through the survival of the cautious and the death of the careless. Predators that hesitated around humans lived long enough to pass on that hesitation. Predators that did not get the chance. But reputation alone does not fully explain a motionless, sleeping target. For that, there is a second mechanism layered on top of the first: neophobia, the instinctive caution most wild animals carry toward anything unfamiliar or unmoving. In the wild, novelty is rarely good news. A strange shape, an unexplained stillness, an object that doesn't behave the way prey is supposed to behave. These are the signs that, throughout evolutionary history, separated the animals that survived long enough to reproduce from the ones that didn't. Hesitation in the face of the unknown is not weakness. It is one of the oldest survival strategies that exists. Put these two mechanisms together: a search image that doesn't recognize a sleeping human as prey, and a built-in caution toward anything that breaks the pattern, and the restraint stops looking mysterious. It starts looking inevitable. There are exceptions, and they prove the rule rather than break it. The man-eating lions of Tsavo in 1898 killed dozens of railway workers over 9 months, and remain one of the most studied predator attack cases in history precisely because of how rare and aberrant they were. Even there, researchers later traced the behavior to specific, identifiable causes: dental injuries that made normal hunting too painful, and a regional famine that had wiped out the lion's usual prey. The exception required an animal pushed completely outside its normal behavioral range. It did not require a sleeping human to look any more appealing than usual. It required the lion's entire decision-making process to break down first. What happens in ordinary cases, the overwhelming majority of cases, looks nothing like that. Wildlife cameras set up near remote camps have captured it directly, again and again. A wolf approaching in the dark, circling the edge of a sleeping camp, drawing closer with each pass. Close enough, in some recorded instances, to be within a few feet of a sleeping body. Close enough to smell breath, body heat, the human scent rising off skin and fabric. And then, at some invisible threshold, stopping. Researchers studying this behavior have a name for it: predator inhibition, a documented hesitation response that occurs even when an attack would carry almost no physical risk to the animal. The wolf is not retreating because of danger. There is no danger. It is retreating because something in its decision-making process refuses to complete the final step. In recorded cases of wildlife encountering sleeping humans in open or lightly protected terrain, campsites, trailside bivouacs, unguarded rural settlements, fatal attacks remain a statistical rarity. Not zero, rare. A fraction of the encounters that, by simple opportunity, could have ended differently. The popular explanation for all of this is simple, and it is repeated so often that it has come to sound like settled fact. Animals are just scared of us. It is intuitive. It fits cleanly into a single sentence. And it is the explanation most people will reach for first without ever examining it closely. But fear isn't really what is happening here. It's recognition, or more precisely, the absence of it. A sleeping human doesn't match the shape, the movement, or the signal that a predator's instincts are built to chase. The animal is not afraid in the way a smaller creature might be afraid of a larger one. It simply does not know what it is looking at. And across millions of years of evolutionary pressure, not attacking what you cannot identify has consistently outperformed attacking it and finding out the hard way. That instinct is not a relic. It is not something that switched off when human civilization grew large enough to stop needing it. It is still active tonight, in every tent pitched along a trailhead, every open bivouac on a mountainside, every quiet field where someone has chosen to sleep under nothing but stars. The same uncertainty that protected the first humans on the open savanna hundreds of thousands of years before agriculture, before cities, before anyone had a word for evolution at all, is still standing guard tonight, quietly, instinctively, in animals that were never taught to do it. They simply inherited the hesitation, the way they inherited everything else that kept their ancestors alive long enough to have them. But hesitation like that doesn't happen by accident. Something, somewhere along the way, had to teach every generation of predator exactly when a human was at their most defenseless, which raises a stranger question than the one this video started with. If animals learned over hundreds of thousands of years exactly when humans were vulnerable enough to risk approaching, how did ancient humans with no clocks, no walls, and no way to call for help ever learn when it was safe to close their eyes at all? That's next.